We're going to be talking about a guitar today that you probably know what it is by looking at the back of the headstock. Most of you can probably tell pretty much what this guitar is. And you're right, it's none other than a Martin. But today, let's get into the 1943 Martin 017. And here it is in all of its glory, the 1943 Martin 017 all mahogany guitar, Parlor style. This is considered one of the more economical lines back in the 40s. You know, it's not a triple aught or anything like that. But recently, within the last 10 years, these guitars have become more valuable. They're smaller and they produce a whole lot of volume with a great mid to bass tone, and they're just wonderful to play. All around, silky smooth neck in the back, just ease on the fretboard, and that's naturally, you know, from your luthier standpoint, how they could set that kind of stuff up. But the guitar itself is wonderfully made, and rightfully so. Vintage guitars are the way to go. If you've got the dollar and you can buy it, by all means. If you come across something like this in 017, anything from the 40s and 50s from Martin, it is a buy if you've got the money and you've got the dough to do it. So let's get into the guitar, hear a little bit how it sounds, and I think you're going to like it. So if you're looking to hear what the guitar sounds like, what it looks like up close, you know, maybe you've got your eyes set on one or you've already got one. Let's get into it, the 1943 Martin 017. Several years ago, I was teaching a guitar class at a local youth camp down here in Southern Illinois. The class was called Guitar, and I was teaching these kids, there's about 5 or 6 of them, how to play guitar, and just to start with a couple of chords and get things situated so they could play something by the end of the week. And midway of the week, this little boy walked up and asked if he could be a part of the class. And I told him, I've only got 5 guitars and I don't have any more to lend, but in your free time, if you want to come into the chapel, I'll be more than happy to teach you a couple chords. So I didn't think anything of it. I thought I'd see him at free time, and about an hour later after the class was over, I believe it was his uncle or his grandpa, one of the two, they come up to me and they say, hey, the boys said that he couldn't join your class. I said, no, I'm kind of full, but I'm more than happy to teach him during free time. And I just don't have an extra guitar. Oh, he said, I've got a guitar. It's at the house. Let me just go get it. Can he join then? I said, yeah, no big deal. So he goes home, gets his guitar, and he drives back about an hour later, and he shows me a guitar, and he said, it just needs a couple strings changed. Can you do that? And I looked at the guitar, and I said, you sure you want him to play this guitar? And he said, yeah, I just need the strings changed. And I said, do you know what you have? And he goes, yeah, it's an old guitar I bought, several years ago when I was a young man. It's been sitting in the loft in my garage for the last 40 years. I said, we need to go into the chapel. Let's get in there. So we go into the chapel, and he says, can you change the string? And I said, well, I'll try. and the knobs were so brittle. And I touched one of the knobs, and it just fell right apart, fell onto the floor, and I felt like an ostrich, put my head in the sand, and just didn't want to do anything. And I told him, listen, let me take it to my guy Jimmy, have him fix the guitar for you. I'll pay for it, everything, and then you can do what you want with it. He goes, okay, what's the big deal here? I said, well, you've got a vintage guitar, and I just don't think you understand what you have. And so he asked a couple questions. So I told him, in the value range of what it was worth, the way it is, and it was in pretty bad shape. But if he fixed it up and restored it, it could be worth a whole lot more. And he was flabbergasted at that. So a little bit later, throughout maybe Friday at the end of camp, he's giving this little devotion in front of all these campers, and he's relating this story to the Bible. And you don't know what the worth is in the Bible until you open it up and actually read it and digest the words in Scripture. And so he calls me up and to tell a little bit about the guitar that he was going to let his grandson or nephew use into the class. And he calls me up, and I tell a little bit about what it's worth, what it could be worth, and then I go and sit down. And about 10 minutes later, he ends his talk, and he asks me to come back up in front of all these kids. And so I'm walking up there thinking, well, I have nothing else to say. I mean, he's already told me everything that he wanted, and I've already told everybody what could be said. And he comes up there, and he calls me up, and we're standing up there in front of 160 campers, and he says, Josh, I've had this guitar in my loft for 30 or 40 years. Been sitting in the same cardboard box with no value, with dust all over it, and I've never known what it was worth until you showed me. And so I want to hand you this guitar. And he hands me this marble. He said, you've been here 10 plus years. You're going to do more justice to this guitar than I ever will. And so he handed me the guitar, and I took it, went and had it fixed. Jimmy did a wonderful job, brought it back to life. And now this thing sings and it plays almost everywhere that I go. And the reason I tell you that story is not because it's a guitar, but it is. But in life, you don't know what things are worth until you're told. Just like with Scripture, you're not really sure of how much worth it has in your life until you give it a shot and you read it. So just like with this guitar, your life should be a walking instrument, a vessel that carries around something that could be shared with everybody else. For me, that's the gospel. It's the whole idea behind this channel, trading the gospel. This guitar, it's amazing that something has been locked up for so long now has a voice to sing, and you can hear clearly how wonderful it sounds. And we should do that in our everyday life. We've always got something to share, whether you think you do or not. And it's best if we dust it off and just give it a shot. Start being comfortable with the uncomfortable.